Thank you for being here, everybody. I'd like to ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that in the average American family, when the wife or the kids get sick, the husband gets angry? Yeah, okay, so you've noticed that. It doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean, there's something illogical about it. It's not as if the wife and the kids get together and conspire against dad to say, let's contract diseases to tick him off. People actually don't get sick intentionally. So what's going on here? Well, I suspect that behind dad's anger is the key to the secret relationship skills gap between men and women. Now, I use this ironically because everybody knows there's a relationship skills gap between men and women. It isn't actually a secret. Right? They wrote plays about it in the classical world, and for the last, 30 or 40 years, there have been television films and TV shows, movie films, all sorts of things, well, tragedies and comedies. I was going to say comedies, but tragedies and comedies about this gap. So I'd like to look at it, and the way we can do that is let's back angry dad up to when he was a teenager. Now, the United States is a complex society, but it is at very least, as sociologists are fond of reminding us, a patriarchy. And so when dad is a teenager, what happens is he starts getting messages that are conscious and some unconscious that he's supposed to be in charge. The basis of a patriarchy is control, and guys are supposed to be in control. I'll pass over how that actually works and go right to the problem that the teenage kid is going to have. He has to be in charge of everything. And then there's one other problem he's got. He's got to be perfect. You've heard the famous TED Talk by Ken Robinson from 2006. And one of the points that Sir Ken makes there is that we stigmatize mistakes. That is, we're not allowed to make mistakes in this society. So this kid is being told that he has to be in charge on one hand, and it has to be flawless on the other. You have some idea, if he's growing up with that message, and men in patriarchies do, why men have performance anxiety and why he gets angry when the wife and kids get sick. Because he's expected to make sure that everything goes perfectly, that there are no problems, and that's a problem. Now, all I want us to do for the relationship piece is imagine the amount of energy and time and focus that goes into trying to be in charge and be perfect. I mean, the skills for being in charge and controlling are very, very, very high. But the skills for most anything else are very low. And men in patriarchies usually have a very basic relationship skill level. It's about here. Women, on the other hand, who in patriarchies develop their own sense of responsibility and commitment, nonetheless, they have lots of time to develop relationship skills, and the skills get very sophisticated. The level is way up here. By the way, I'd like to tell you what those skills are, but I'm a man in a patriarchy. I haven't a clue. But I can see the gap. I know when I'm outclassed. Now, these two, the guy with this level and the woman with this level, are going to get into a relationship with each other. How's this going to work? Well, the first thing that happens is both of them forget the relationship skills gap. It's romantic, but it's a little bit of a problem. Because let's start with him. He sees her, and he's drawn to her, and so after the preliminaries, he decides he's going to try his basic relationship skill. Now, we know what that is with men. There's one relationship skill they've been allowed to have: physical intimacy, sex. So after the preliminaries, he tries it. And if it works, he tries it again. And if it works, he tries it again. And after 3 or 4 of those, he says, well, I knew I was a guy, I could do this. I can do this relationship thing. I'm in charge, I'm in control, and I'm making this work. In the meantime, she's thinking, if it works out fine for her, well, when is he going to start doing the other stuff? She's forgotten the skills gap. See, she thinks that the physical intimacy, the sex, is his default relationship skill. It isn't. It's his only skill. That's it. She's seen it. There isn't any more, right? And what happens, of course, is both of them start drawing false conclusions. On his part, now let's start with her. It's more fun. On her part, she starts thinking, okay, when is he going to get around to the rest of it? What's wrong with him? Maybe he's not into me enough. There are books about that. Maybe he's not committed, and so on. And if we pass over the psychological trauma and leave that to the side, she's looking for something that he's not doing here and a reason that he's not doing, and she might start to draw funny conclusions. Some of the conclusions have to do with, and usually, my favorite, men only want one thing. One thing you notice when people get frustrated in relationships is they move from being in a relationship with one person to the entire species, right? So you go from he's not doing it to men only want one thing. He doesn't want only one thing, he can only do one thing. On his side, what's going on is that he's going to draw the same odd conclusions. He's going to think, I don't know what she wants. Now, actually, that's true. He doesn't know what she wants because he doesn't have the skills. It's as if he walked onto a basketball court never having played basketball. Someone passes him the ball, he catches it, and they say, let's play ball. He only knows how to do one thing, pass the ball back, and then it's hopeless. When people expect more of him, he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't have the skills. And so he starts drawing other conclusions too. Well, she's just demanding. Or she's trying to trap me. Or one of my favorites, women are mysterious. You notice he went from the individual to the whole species. Women are mysterious. You can't understand them. There's no pleasing them. That sort of thing. So these really goofy things in terms of the conclusions start happening because the skills gap isn't closing. And I've got to tell you, I've seen therapists forget this in couples groups. So it's a fairly important thing. Now here's the problem. Getting over the gap isn't terribly romantic. Because the men, for their part, are going to have to realize they don't have the skills. Now, men hate to not have the skills because they're supposed to be in charge and they're supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to know how to do all of this stuff. The fact that they can't annoys them. But they will also draw wrong conclusions about the fact that they're annoyed. They will think, I don't know what's wrong with me. Or maybe it's a character flaw. Or maybe I was traumatized. It probably happened when I was a child. If they don't do that, they will try to blame the woman. I wasn't going to use this, but there's a thing in comparative mythology that has to do with the second creation story in Genesis, the Adam and Eve one. You probably know that one. And there's a moment in the Adam and Eve story where Eve is eaten from the fruit. God has figured out that something is wrong. He goes to the garden and he says to Adam, okay, what have you done? And Adam says, the woman you gave me tempted me and I did eat. Now, men have been trying to develop that level of blaming skill ever since. Because Adam blames God and his wife in the same phrase. The woman you gave me, he doesn't even need a whole clause to do it. Boom, that's it. The blame's there. And that's the other thing that the man will do. He'll try to find some way to blame her or blame God. Right? Now, all he really has to do, what's the expression? Man up, which is a metaphor I'm not going to pursue at this point, and really say, okay, I don't know how to do this. Again, it's not romantic. It's not the kind of thing that's terribly appealing. I'm not going to just be dying to go out and say to the woman that I'm trying to be romantic with and macho and so on and say, I don't know what the heck you're doing here. Can we have a mentoring session? And that's where the woman comes in. Because the woman has to be the mentor in this case. She's the one who's got the skills. Now, I mentioned this to someone, a female friend of mine. I'm a male in a patriarch, so I keep female friends just to show that I have them and I'm with it, politically correct. I was talking to a female friend and I mentioned that and she said, oh, no, I don't want to be his mother. It's not being his mother. He had a mother, that's how you got him. He needs a mentor. He needs someone who's willing to say, okay, I know you don't have these skills. We all know this. There are jokes on television about it. So here's what you need to know. And what will happen is she will be giving him general skills as well as specific ones about her own needs, which will then start to relate to his so that the skills gap, hopefully, will start to close. Now, that's about the best I can do in terms of a solution because the beauty of being a classically trained philosopher, which I am, is that our only job is really to point out the bleeding obvious and try to get off the stage before anybody knows that's all we've done. This is the bleeding obvious. To change it, people are going to have to work pretty hard. But there can be lots of good payoffs about this. Where are we, 2013? About 15 years ago, the sex addiction expert, Patrick Carnes, came into this area and was giving a series of talks. And he said, if we can get male-female relationships right, we can help to save the world. And by the way, as a quick aside, I'm not talking about same-sex relationships, simply because, as my youngest brother who died of AIDS always said to me, don't talk, he was gay, don't talk about something you don't know anything about. But if anything here helps same-sex relationships, great. But Pat Carnes was focusing on male-female relationships, and he said, we can help to save the world if these two can figure out how to get together, because the skills involved will be very sophisticated for transforming the society. So I'd like to leave you with an image. In the 1700s in Sweden, there's a very, very famous scientist, Emanuel Swedenborg. So famous, in fact, that like Einstein in the 20th century here, if he moved from one town to another, he made headline news. In midlife, he started having all kinds of spiritual experiences and spiritual visions, especially of the other world. And he would go and report it, by the way, in multiple volumes, good scientist. One of the experiences that he had was he was watching, and this great light being was coming toward him, and he thought, well, that must be an angel. But as he watched, what happened was there were two people, and they turned slightly away from each other. And he noticed, this isn't just one big angel. So he asked about this phenomenon, and he was told, these are two people who are profoundly in love. And when they turn toward each other, they create an angel. So what I'm hoping is that we will work hard to overcome the relationship skills gap, save the world a bit by creating lots of angels. Thank you for listening.